What is going on, everyone? It is Tyler McKinney back here again, and today we're getting into the XFL, and just don't really feel so good about this one. Anyways, first time here, glad to have you. Return viewer, thanks for coming back and thanks for watching more videos. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. Now, I know that it just seems like everything is politics these days. Well, unfortunately, everything is politics these days. And it feels like whenever we get some information, it's politics. And I don't know what to tell you other than it's politics. And politics keeps coming up. And it's even gotten itself into the XFL. And listen, right now there really isn't a whole lot to talk about with the XFL. Now, I do know that we have big information that's going to be coming up fairly soon for the XFL. But as it is right now, we don't have anything. So this is what we have. And, I have some thoughts on what's kind of going on and the big announcement that came from The Rock. And if you've been living under a rock, like how I did that, The Rock has endorsed Biden and Harris for presidential nomination and for vice president. So he's come out and endorsed Biden and Harris. He did that on Sunday. And that's been kind of a big deal that's been going around with that. Now, nothing new. He did that on his own platform on Twitter and on Facebook, and posted the 7-minute video where he talks about that and gives his reasons why, and talks about how he had a really good virtual sit-down meeting with the two and really liked what he came away with. And it really is something to where, listen, I've been saying this on my channel, keep politics where politics need to be and do it on your own time and with your own thing. So, that being said, The Rock, thank you. I appreciate the fact that you actually took the time out of your schedule and not your business to go and put your political views out there. And I appreciate you doing that. Appreciate you doing it by that design and that way that you've done that. And I could kind of figure that this one was coming with a lot of posts and a lot of things that he's been putting out there of late, showing kind of where he stands on a lot of the issues of today's takes and all of that. But the thing is he hasn't been tying it to the XFL. He hasn't been tying it to a lot of his brands. But he has been coming out and being vocal about these things. Now, these are things that he hasn't done in the past. And this is the thing that's starting to concern me. And there's some other things that I've seen over really the past day or so, because this happened on Sunday and we're 2 days past that. So there are some things that are really starting to concern me with this that, I'm starting to question where the XFL itself is going to go because of it. So, again, I first want to say that I thank him for doing it the way that he's done it and kept the politics where they need to be. And so thank you. First and foremost, thank you for that. Now, let's go ahead and let's look at this thing, because he's been kind of on this slope, so to say, ever since he's gotten into Hollywood, especially his earlier years in Hollywood, in the mid 2000s and things like that. And as he's progressed throughout his career, he's gotten progressively more and more liberal with things. And he's gotten progressively more and more vocal about things. Now, if you remember, of course, everybody does. He started as a football player, didn't make it as a football player. Was a fairly decent football player, but didn't make it as a pro football player. Transferred over into sports entertainment, into wrestling, and he just boomed and became a star. Then he went from professional wrestling into the Hollywood world and became, according to Forbes, the highest paid actor in Hollywood. And that's where we stand right now. And so I guess if it makes sense, your fan base, a lot of the people who have been following you have you've kind of moved from one spectrum to the next, from being in professional wrestling and moving into Hollywood. You can kind of see that progression, and you can kind of see where it goes. That type of event happening and moving him more liberal into a more liberal fashion, and in that with him being, out in Hollywood now and all of that stuff with it. But even more than that, here's the stuff that really has been kind of interesting to me. And Again, this is going down politics, so if you want to, you can go ahead and shut the video off. I apologize. It's not really sports. It's not sports related. However, it is my thoughts on where I think that the XFL is going. So bear with me as I go through the weeds and then get to where I'm going to on the other side of things, because if I can give this backstory of things, I think that it'll really prop up and give you some insight into my thoughts going forward for the future. However, I do want to reiterate, thank you, Rock, for not putting it and infusing it yet into the XFL, but going and putting your own opinions and your own thoughts on your own pages. Even though they're not mine and I don't agree with them and I disagree a lot with your reasoning behind it, I think it's very flawed in your thought processes and a lot of the things with it. I do commend you and thank you for at least using the proper veins to put your own opinion out there. Now, moving back to what we got here at hand. It's really interesting to see. So, when you start looking at things from a very liberal perspective, a lot of, the liberal bigwigs, if you follow the money of where they get a lot of their money comes from a lot of other countries. In particular, China is very, very huge in that. And so when you start to actually look at The Rock's ties to China, you start to see something glaringly obvious and big coming from that. Now, when you look at it, for things, for a global market, for the way that things have been moving in the past before Trump became president, you had things going from, America centralized to being kind of this world kind of a thing. And a lot of it had to do with money coming in from other countries, being funneled into these places. And you can look at a lot of the high ranking, whether it be politicians, officials, and things like that, business people, a lot of money is coming in from China and other places. And so when you do that and start to follow that trend and look at it, it doesn't just stop in politics. It doesn't just stop in business. It goes into Hollywood especially as well. When you start looking at where the money is flowing and where the money is coming from, there's a lot of money going into Hollywood from China. And specifically with The Rock, a lot of his big movies have actually been bigger and brought in more dollars through China. And he's become really, really big over there. So when you start looking at things and you can kind of see where some of this stuff is coming from. Now, granted, some of you might call this conspiracy theory, but when you back it up with facts, it makes sense. So you've got Rock's movies. When you look at them, just go down the list and look, where are they making money? They make a lot of money in the United States, but they make a lot more money over in China. They're making more money over in China, to where China is starting to bring in The Rock a lot of money. Now let's fast forward to this. And this was one of those things that was odd to me. And I never really, kind of understood this, looked at this. It was something that was, odd to me when The Rock really started promoting his tequila brand, which again, a lot of celebrities and things, branch off into different avenues and ways to make money in different ventures. So that wasn't necessarily surprising to me. It was just odd that I was like, okay, why tequila? Well, when you start to actually look into it, tequila is becoming a big deal over in China. And he's actually making a lot of sales over in China. Right now, the Chinese are really heavy drinkers. They drink a lot. And he's making a lot of money with this tequila brand over in China. So that's another thing that's starting to push me there with the China thing. And when you look at it, everything that the NBA has been doing, especially with all of their their pandering, all of their stuff of putting their, all of their woke social justice stuff out there. But the sad thing is that they're okay with everything that China's been doing. And you see that, well, the NBA is getting a lot of money from China. And there's the big push with the Chinese with the NBA. So when you start seeing this, and now you see guys like LeBron and you're like, all of the atrocities that we know that the Chinese are doing, let alone the ones that we don't know, because, we do know that they have lied to us. They've been lying to us about, the biggest thing that's been happening to the world of late. We know that they've lied to us about that, and there are other things that they've lied to us about. But the injustices, the literal injustices that are happening in their own country, and they won't condemn them, but yet, they'll condemn the things that we're doing, which pale in comparison to what's happening. The tragedies that are happening here in the United States way pale in comparison to what's happening over in China. Like, you can't even put them anywhere close to another, but they turn a blind eye to it. Why? Because China's been giving them a lot of money, and I'm starting to see this here with The Rock. So it's starting to make sense that for The Rock, it makes more sense for him to have a guy like Joe Biden in presidency, because it's going to open up those borders for him to make more money and to be able to easily access Chinese market and the Chinese government with that, without having to, have a lot of, these type of ties and these things that are more American centralized. It's going to open things up to him for that. So it would make sense to me in that vein with it, when looking at it from just a personal gain side of things, that he would be going down this. Now, all of that set up to say this with the XFL. I was kind of excited by it with the XFL. He's a guy, with The Rock coming on. He's a guy that's had a really good relationship with McMahon. And now as I'm starting to see things and see how he's really transformed into, this very liberal guy, and I don't necessarily know if that's really where he stands, or if it's just that that's making him money. And money talks. And unfortunately, a lot of people go where the money is. And if through what The Rock has said, he's been fairly quiet up until about 2017, when he said he really considered running for president in 2016, because he just didn't, believe in any of the candidates. And he came out and said that he voted for Barack Obama both times. And so you're starting to see that shift, right, to that liberal side, because he was kind of considered, something of he really truly has kind of, up until really the recent past probably 4 or 5 years, kind of, put himself out there. He kept out of politics. He did that with it. However, he's starting to infuse it in there, and he's starting to come out more and more progressive with things. And it does scare me with the XFL on where he's going to go with this, to where this is really turning into one. It's really showing that the Rock really is about the business, and not that he's not going to be about, building guys up, giving guys a second chance. I think that he will, but it does scare me in that when the push comes to shove, will he stick with it to the end? Now, I do know that he's got the partners. Danny seems to be full on with the XFL. And I don't know any of her stances with things or that with it. Redbird Capital's jumped in this as well, but I can tell you Redbird Capital is there to make money, and it's only a money machine, and there really isn't this love for things. So I think you have that. You have that aspect, but I could see all of this stuff starting to infuse into the XFL, changing the XFL of what we had, which was directly football, focused on football, only football, to where I could see them really start infusing a lot of the things that the NFL, the NBA have kind of done. These digs and these things and this stuff that just doesn't need to be there. One example of that, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent, but it just makes sense to me to add this in there. It's, when I sit down to watch the past season of Last Chance U with the Netflix series, it talks about, how the head coach, of the Oakland team, that his wife, she loves everybody, and she has just a heart and a love for everybody. But then he's got to throw the dig in there for everybody but our current president, which he doesn't name him by name, but we all know that he means, Donald Trump. And, why that needed to be in there, it was totally fell out of character with everything. It totally fell out of where everything was. It didn't need to be there. It had nothing to do with the story, but it was all part of a dig to put in there to show the alliance, show the allegiances, and to show that stuff with it. And I'm worried that type of thing is going to kind of work its way into the XFL, where you're going to start to see all of these movements and all of this stuff, because I really do believe at the bottom line of things that all of these movements that the people don't believe in them, that literally the movements they're using the people, the ground roots people, as pawns to get their bigger agenda done, and really to move us towards, again, this socialism type of a thing, to where they make more money, they become more powerful, they have more power. And the things that I'm starting to see are questioning, my allegiances to the XFL and where I think the XFL is going to end up with it. Now we'll see where things transpire, and I'm not jumping necessarily off ship yet. And The Rock hasn't done anything, like the NFL, with coming out and being just, very in your face. However, he really hasn't had an opportunity yet. So I'm going to let the jury be out on this one. I'm not going to jump to conclusions like some people would. I'm not going to go ahead and cry X, Y, and Z, or cry wolf, or do whatever with it. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to look at things, but I can tell you right now, as where things stand with the XFL, I'm not as confident as what I was before, and I'm starting to maybe question if we're going to end up with the XFL like what we had it, and are we going to start to see more of this social justice, more of this pandering, and more of this wokeness like what we're seeing with the NFL. So there's some of my thoughts. I know a lot of you guys might not like that, but it is what it is. That's my opinion. Those are my thoughts. And like always, the question is, what do you think? I'd love to know what you think down in the comment section. Leave me some comments and we can continue the conversation on down there. All right, guys, I know that you're busy. I know that I'm busy. So let's get on out of here. You have a good night. Bye.